My name is Dominic White, and welcome to Episode 1 of Rescued by Dragons, the tale of a weekly Dungeons & Dragons campaign my friends and I play in Portland, Maine. If you haven't already done so, please listen to last week's introductory episode to learn about the idea behind this podcast, the world our story takes place in, and the player characters. Now, picture yourself in a cozy, torch-lit tavern, pint in hand, huddled around a table with other travelers, waiting to hear the ongoing tales of the party of adventurers that would become known as the Brunch Club. Elnon is a wilderness country. It has a few towns and a major city along its coasts, where people live in relative safety. But the unsettled places between those pockets of civilization, even the roads, are filled with danger. It was on one of these roads that Alora, a copper-skinned, black-haired wood elf with a longbow slung over her studded leather armor, met Salus, a red-headed, green-eyed forest gnome. She wore purple robes and carried a leather satchel and a dagger in her belt. Deciding to travel together for safety, they learned a little bit about each other. Salus, being charismatic and talkative, was the first to tell her story. She was from Root Run, where an odd encounter imbued her with wild, uncontrollable magic powers. She was on her way to Elnor, the city of magic, in hopes that its immense and famous Crystal Spire library would contain information to help her tame her newfound sorcery. Alora did not have much to offer her new friend. She could not explain why, but she had no memory of her life prior to a week before. She knew her name was Alora. She knew she was from the Bloodwood to the north, but it was dangerous to go back for some reason. She knew she was a ranger. And she knew she could shoot a bee off a flower from 600 feet with her longbow. Salus suggested helpfully that there might be some information at the library that could tell her how to get her memory back. So they decided to take the long journey to Elnor together. They arrived at the village of Sturgeon at the same time as a light snow. In a small but crowded tavern, they ate dinner, drank drinks, and relaxed. A 5'1" silver-haired lunar elf with porcelain white skin approached their table. She wore black chainmail armor adorned with the emblem of a raven high on her chest, and a silver shield slung across her back. She stared at them wordless through black eyes. Salus and Alora asked the lunar elf what she wanted. She awkwardly, but with a haughty tone, asked if she could sit with them, as it was the last empty chair in the tavern. She introduced herself as Drusilla Gallanoodle, a cleric of the Raven Queen, hailing from an area known as the Swamp of Sorrows. They fell into conversation and learned that Drusilla was on her way to Elnor as well. She hoped to find answers within the Great Library about a recent pestilence that visited her homeland. It dried up the abundant swamp and killed almost all the inhabitants, including all of her family. Meeting another traveler who shared their destination, and knowing there is safety in numbers, they invited Drusilla to travel with them. She accepted. They agreed to share a room at the tavern, and to leave first thing in the morning for Wyhill, a 2-day walk from Sturgeon, and the next stop on the way to Elnor. The next morning, the light snow had turned into a blizzard. With the weather too bad for travel, they checked out some of Sturgeon's local shops to try to find anything useful for their journey. In a small building attached to a smaller house, they found a friendly local dwarven blacksmith named Nick Lobach. They looked around his combination forge/shop for a little while, but quickly realized they couldn't afford anything. As they were getting ready to leave, a stout woman came into the shop from the house. She introduced herself as Nick's wife, Mindy, but her introduction stopped as she noticed Salus and looked closely at her for a brief moment. "Oh my," she gasped. "You're Salus Garrick, the hero of Root Run." Yeah, I guess," Salus replied with uncharacteristic bashfulness. "Oh my, we don't get famous people in our little shop very often. Wait till I tell my friends about this. Nick, why didn't you tell me we had a famous hero in our home?" Nick shrugged apologetically at both Salus and his wife. After Drusilla and Alora got some amusement out of their friend's embarrassment, they bid their goodbyes to the Lobachs and continued shopping for provisions. With their shopping done, Drusilla suggested they get out of the cold weather and go have brunch. Salus and Alora confessed they did not know what brunch was. Drusilla assured them they would enjoy it. They headed to the only other tavern in town, the Black Lamb. It was empty when they arrived. The bartender had an unwelcoming look on his face, as though he was annoyed to see customers so early. Alora's brisk tone when ordering drinks did not make him any more welcoming. "That'll be 1 gold, he said as he slid them their glasses. 1 gold for 3 drinks? Asked Drusilla, shocked. Each, the bartender replied. Salis, with her friendly, charismatic demeanor, asked if they could somehow get a more reasonable price for drinks and food. The bartender noticed their armor and weapons and made them a deal. If they promised not to go poking around, they could clean out the infestation of large rats in the basement in exchange for free drinks. They agreed and were let into the basement down a ladder through a trap door behind the bar. "How bad could a few rats be?" mused Salis as they climbed down the ladder. The bartender chuckled to himself as he closed the trap door above them. The basement was filled with sealed crates and dusty barrels. It was dimly lit by torches, but being elves and a gnome, they could see in the dark just fine. Drusilla and Alora pulled out their swords. Salis raised her hands in front of her. A shape moved quickly from behind one barrel to another. They saw another shape move behind one of the crates. A rat, 3 times larger than expected, emerged from the shadows. "Leave this to me," said Drusilla, confidently. She got down on one knee, and a look of concentration fell over her face. She reached her hand out to the large rat and began speaking to it in what sounded to Salis and Alora like random squeaks and grunts. The rat halted its approach and stared at her for a brief moment. Drusilla and the rat locked eyes briefly, and she smiled slightly with self-satisfaction and relaxed her tensed posture for a moment. Suddenly, the rat lunged at Drusilla and pierced her armor on the forearm with long, sharp teeth. A second rat lunged at Alora, but missed. A third and fourth rat made their attacks, taking large bites out of Salis's leg, and another bite again piercing Drusilla's armor. Alora and Drusilla stabbed at the rats, doing some damage with their swords. Salis raised her hands as her green eyes began to glow. Magical missiles shot from her hands and disintegrated some of the rats. The remaining vermin attacked once more, but the women dispatched them before they could do much more damage. They looked around the basement, behind the barrels and crates, and when they were satisfied all the large rats were dead, headed back up to the bar. Before ascending the ladder, Drusilla muttered a barely audible prayer, and a purple light glowed around her wounds, healing them. Then she did the same for Salis. The bartender kept his word and provided them with free drinks for the afternoon. He did look at Drusilla funny when she began ordering food traditionally served for breakfast, even though it was well into the afternoon. On their way back to their rooms, they agreed that the bartender was suspicious and hiding something in the basement. But they decided that they should get an early start in the morning if the weather cooperated. They also agreed that the concept of brunch was outstanding. It was still snowing in the morning, but the wind had died down enough to begin their journey to Wyhill. As late afternoon neared, the road turned a bit and they soon found themselves walking next to a river, with a dense forest on the other side of them. They talked about when they should consider making camp for the night when they were set upon by a group of 6 bandits who had been concealed behind the forest's trees. One of the taller bandits wore slightly more patchwork leather armor than the others. He appeared to be their leader and stepped forward. "The road is a dangerous place for ladies," he said with confidence but no charm. "I'll make you an offer. Give us any coin you have and your weapons in exchange for your pretty lives." Alora's arrow sinking into the shoulder of one of the bandits announced that though they were outnumbered, they would not be taking them up on his offer. Salis managed to kill one of the bandits with a salvo of magic missiles. Drusilla did not draw her sword, but spoke a prayer out loud, beckoning a sacred flame to descend from the sky and sear another of the bandits where he stood. Alora drew her sword as she could no longer effectively use her bow when the bandits closed in on them. As the groups traded blows, the women were able to kill half the bandits, but had already suffered a dangerous amount of damage. The apparent leader of the bandits moved near the unarmored Salis, ready to strike her with his sword. But before he attacked, his eyes grew wide in terror. He paused briefly before fleeing back into the forest. Salis turned to notice an unnaturally large crocodile had emerged from the river and was racing towards them. He possibly smelled blood and was hoping for an easy meal. Before the crocodile could get any closer, though, a silver-scaled dragonborn in polished chainmail armor leapt from the woods to intercept the beast. On one arm he wore a kite shield with a painting of a dragon upon it. His other hand gripped a heavy-looking warhammer. Unfortunately, his hammer blows glanced off the crocodile's thick hide, and the reptile struck the Dragonborn with a powerful bite and a terrible bludgeoning attack with its tail. Despite the Dragonborn's struggles against the large crocodile, he had managed to stop his advancement towards the three women. Salus and Drusilla used the moment of confusion to get the upper hand on the remaining bandits and killed them with Sacred Flame and magic missiles before they could follow their leader into the forest. Elora noticed the Dragonborn had fallen prone, and the crocodile was bearing down on him with open jaws filled with flesh-ripping teeth. She took careful aim with her longbow and killed the crocodile instantly with an arrow into the brain through its open mouth. She saw the Dragonborn rise to one knee, catch his breath, and place his hand over his wounds, which healed from his own touch. With satisfying irony, Salus and Drusilla looted the corpses, robbing the dead bandits of their coin. After healing and feeling as though they gained valuable experience, they contemplated where to make camp in the seemingly bandit-infested forest. But first, they needed to decide what to do about the mysterious Dragonborn who had come to their aid. Please join us next week for Chapter 2. Drusilla was played by J.P. Black. Elora was played by Liz Richard. Salus was played by Anna Flemke. Vorjon was played by Dominic White. And our benevolent dungeon master was Brian Messmer. More information about Rescued by Dragons and our podcasts can be found at rescuedbydragons.com. You can follow us on Instagram at Rescued by Dragons and on Twitter at Rescue Dragons. Thank you very much for listening. Please join us next week for Chapter 2 of our story, where even the people creating it don't know what's going to happen next.